Again, just a reminder, we are recording this presentation and we will share our link on our LinkedIn page to our YouTube for those who cannot attend, and they can watch at their convenience. Again, my name is Avella Spiritu and I'm with the Red 5, and I'm part of the Edmonton Lean community of practice. We host Lean coffees on the third Friday of every month from September through June. It runs from 9 a.m. to about 10 a.m.-ish. Locations vary, though. With COVID nowadays, we're doing a lot of our stuff virtual and online. And basically, Lean practitioners from our local community, we meet to discuss various Lean issues and share lessons learned through a structured yet agenda-less process where attendees decide topics of the conversation for the day, and we welcome everyone from the beginners to the experts. There are no expectations for participation except come, join, and have some fun. Some people come to every meeting, others come when they can, but I've always found the general response is that it's a lot of fun, lots of laughter, and we love seeing new faces, and we love seeing old faces as well too. This one's going to be a little bit different today, as we've been going for a lot of our series this year, and we'll be doing a series of presentations on local Lean practitioners, and this one is on RPK Architects. So RPK, if you haven't heard of them before, they've been around for over 50 years, and they're known for their inclusive design processes that creates progressive architecture that is both functional, sustainable, and aesthetically pleasing. It's got to look good. So, and Karen Muir is with RPK. She has about 30 years in the design field, and she's an associate there. And she's got a ton of Lean experience. She has a Lean Yellow Belt, she's got a Lean Healthcare Certificate, and she's a co-team lead for Lean at her firm. And on top of all that, she's an active member with our Lean COP and is part of our steering committee. I remember one time we had a workshop together, and she said something to me that did stick, that it's not simply about continuous improvement, it's about building a culture within the people of leadership and the continuous improvement. If not, Lean will not stick. So I'm really, really happy to have Karen today. She'll be sharing her team's Lean journey so far, and she's going to share what did stick and what is still posing the challenge. So welcome, Karen, and I'll send it off to you.
Well, thanks, Aval. Just get my slides going here. Okay, well, Avel has given me quite an extensive introduction there, so I'm not sure what else to add. Maybe just that my formal background is in both engineering and architecture, and I'm a registered architect. I've been an associate with RPK since about 2007, and I've been with RPK itself since 2002, back when it was actually called RPAP. But I'm not here to talk about me. I'm here to talk about RPK. So we're located just west of downtown in the Western Supplies building. It's a fabulous brick building that's more than 100 years old, and we really enjoy our space there. Right now, we're a team of approximately 19 people. And I say 19 because one of our long-standing associates with the firm, Kim Norsworthy, just retired a few weeks ago, and I really can't bring myself to take his name off this slide yet. So we're 19 or we're 20, depending on how you want to count. We're structured with 3 partners who own the firm, Jen Prashilo, Jonathan Rockcliffe, and Jan Kromen. We have 4 or 5 associates, depending on how I'm counting today. And we have 12 staff members. We do a variety of work across the institutional, residential, and commercial spectrum, mostly residential and institutional. So we do hospitals, assisted living, seniors affordable living, family affordable living, long-term care, medical and dental clinics, public infrastructure with both the province and municipalities, and we do a bit of commercial work as well. We, of course, do the reno and rehab work that comes with those sectors so that our clients can renew their buildings throughout the life of their building. So Lean at RPK. When we talk about Lean, the first name that probably comes to your mind is Toyota. But RPK, we're not a car factory. So what is our product, or what's coming off our assembly line? If you were to guess buildings, well, you'd actually be wrong, because contractors actually produce the buildings. We don't. We don't put on the tool belt and actually make them. That falls with others. So maybe your next guess would be tender drawings and specifications in order for those contractors to build the building. And tender drawings and specifications are the engine that keeps an architecture firm running. It is a big proportion of our work. But in reality, we do many other different deliverables as part of our scope of work. So we do proposals, functional programming, feasibility studies, rezoning, schematic design concepts, schematic design reports, 3D design concepts, development permit drawings, interior design concepts, outline specs, detailed design reports, the tender drawings and specifications, of course, tender addenda, building permit documentation, clarifications, design revisions, change orders, shop drawings, progress claim reviews, warranty reviews, and many more things that did not make this list. The tender drawings and specifications aren't in the final chain in the sequence of events for a project. And just to throw in a classic architect line, I want to tell you that this drawing is not to scale, the timeline. Frequently in our work, we find there are deliverables that must be done out of the typical order. So for example, just this year, we had a rezoning that because of the municipal election, we weren't able to achieve rezoning until we were well into designing the building, instead of beforehand when it would make the most sense to everybody. Or sometimes there are log jams with the municipality to do with permits, and we need to apply for a building permit earlier than you would otherwise might expect. And not all projects require all scopes. It can depend on the complexity or scale of the project, or even just the client preferences for what they would like as deliverables. Sometimes we know from the get-go that the scope will be limited, or maybe it will be delayed. And when there are really large gaps in a project, it's practically a new project if it ever comes back online. The client's needs may have changed, the building code may have changed, or material costs may have escalated with different ratios than you would have anticipated. And a current example is, who would have known a few years ago that there would be a resin shortage in the world right now? Sometimes we have projects that die prematurely because of external forces that we can't control. And sometimes we find that the client's expectations just need to be managed in terms of what they can achieve with their budget or their timeline. Not all of the scopes of work that are on this diagram are done on a regular basis either. Myself, for an example, I'm working on a long-term project, and so I have not done a detailed design report for more than 2 years. So it's not at the tip of my fingers in terms of something that I did yesterday and I can pick it up and do it again. It's something I'd have to go back and remember, well, how did I do that the last time? So we're obviously not an assembly line like Toyota would be. And how do we tame this chaos that we've got going on in the office? Well, it doesn't happen overnight. Myself, I've always been someone who looks for improvements. It's just part of my personality. And a lean philosophy was my thing before I even knew what lean was, because of my nature. But I found that I wasn't making much progress talking to others because I didn't have the right tools and the right terminology to discuss these ideas without coming across to others as though I was criticizing their way of doing their work. In 2016, RPK managed to land an IPD project. And there was about 7 of us that were assigned to work on the IPD team. As an IPD team, we did some basic lean training, such as the Lego airplane factory exercise, and we participated in numerous team building events. It was a really collaborative environment, and we learned some of the lean tools, such as plus delta, pull planning, the 8 wastes, and 5S'ing. It did have an impact on us, and we were interested. And so that same year, when the management team was meeting for our strategic planning session, we added becoming a lean organization into our strategic plan at RPK. The people who were working on that IPD project brought back some of the ideas to the rest of RPK. One of the first ideas introduced was plus delta. So prior to this, we'd had a long-standing informal policy of a social end to Friday afternoons, but it was a bit scattered. We didn't all get together as a group, and not everyone really participated. When we started doing plus delta, we scheduled it from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock every Friday, and we gathered as a group to reflect on the week that had been. So the positives, the not so positives, or the deltas, and what did we learn from these? Items could be work-related or they could be personal. And each week, a different person acted as the facilitator and the scribe to give everyone exposure to this leadership role. To be frank, it shocked me how quickly this became our norm. When we'd only been doing it for about a month, I had left for a 3-week vacation. And in the back of my mind, I just assumed it was going to kind of fizzle out while I was gone. But much to my surprise, when I came back from vacation, I found out that it had carried on each week without me. So it really had stuck. Another transplant from the IPD team was the idea of a productivity hour. So the notion is that you schedule an hour every day when everyone in the office would work quietly without talking to each other and without talking to externals on the phone or have people into the office for meetings. It lasted for a bit, but it just really didn't stick. We found that it was so hard to schedule 1 hour that worked for everybody across the board within our organization. And so it just didn't seem like it continued for the long term. Eventually in this timeline, I did hear about this Lean Coffee group and joined, and a few of us within RPK started attending on a semi-regular basis. Occasionally, even RPK hosted the Lean Coffee group in our boardroom. And I would find that after each of these Lean Coffee sessions, you know, I was all jazzed up and excited about Lean again. However, in between those sessions, maybe my enthusiasm waned, and within the small group of people in the office that were interested in Lean, we really felt like it was a steep uphill battle. There was a few of us that had drunk the Kool-Aid, but we didn't seem to be making progress getting the whole office involved. So we decided we needed to do some formal training for the office, and we did it for the whole office. So what did this look like? We brought in Avel and Shafraz from Red 5 to do a Yellow Belt Lean program. And we were fortunate enough to take advantage of the Canada-Alberta Job Grant, which was able to subsidize some of the training costs. We broke into 2 groups, one which was the partners and associates, and another which was staff. It was close to a 50-50 breakdown, maybe a 60-40 in terms of number of people. And the 2 groups worked about 4 weeks apart within the modules. The reason that the partners and associates were ahead of the other group was so that we were able to learn the concepts and get our heads wrapped around them before the staff were introduced to them. So if they were looking to us for guidance, we hopefully would be a bit more in the know about what was going on with each of the training modules. We had training sessions about every 2 weeks, and each session we'd have homework that needed to be completed. We'd discuss the homework and we'd learn about what the upcoming new work was going to be and what the homework would be. The topics that we covered were team building and culture, the 14 principles of Lean, 8 wastes, continuous improvement, incremental improvement, 5S, the visible, communication and planning, Kanban and visuals, personal productivity, Lean in an architecture firm, pull planning, and target value design. We started with some team building exercises to get everybody jazzed up about Lean. Avel and Shafraz led us in the Lego airplane factory exercise. We had a lot of fun and it opened up people's mind to the idea of change within RPK. We learned about Kanbans and other visuals and how to manage our task flows for projects with these Kanbans. With the Kanban, you get to do a brain dump of the tasks out of your head and onto paper, onto Post-it notes to help distribute the workload among other team members and let everybody know a better idea of what the path ahead is going to be. We, of course, made many jokes about that we needed to invest in the Post-it company because we went through quite a few Post-its as part of the Kanban exercises. Using the Kanban boards themselves, we also added daily project stand-ups into our routine so that people could understand the priorities on projects for the day or for the week. Another great visual tool is a pull plan. This image is a portion of one of mine. But we have found pull plans to be really difficult, and I don't feel like our pull plans come close to the skill sets that many contractors are used to. But even us doing a light version of a pull plan is better than not attempting one at all. We learned about the 8 wastes of Lean and the 8 wastes that Lean would like to remove. And here are some ideas about how some of the wastes would apply to an architecture office. For defects, it could be errors or uncoordinated items in the drawings and specifications. Overproduction could mean rendering a project in 3D when you're only in the schematic design stage. Waiting could be that you haven't anticipated or planned for the work by other stakeholders in the project, and therefore you're spinning your wheels until they're able to complete their work. Non-utilized staff talent could be that some people are too busy while other people are looking for things to keep them busy. Transportation could be the obvious and moving of goods, but we don't actually have that many goods to be transported within our firm. So it more applies to the unnecessary back and forth between software platforms, for example, that we would use. Inventory could be work that's started, but it's not far enough along that we could do a progress billing with the client. Motion could be that you have to look through unorganized computer file folders for the information that you need. And finally, excess processing could be that you've added extraneous detail to a drawing when the client just wanted a quick diagram. Of course, a classic Lean exercise is 5S, particularly the copy room. Probably most organizations who do Lean training end up 5S'ing their copy room. We also applied the 5S philosophy to computer file directories or even project files themselves within the software, such as Revit, cleaning out the extraneous information so that the project file itself is smaller. and easier to navigate. During the time that we were doing our lean training, we coincidentally happened to be that we were doing a major overhaul in our office of the workstations, the carpet, and the painting without us moving out. So we had to purge and stuff ourselves into really small spaces with only our necessary items so that we could limit the phasing for the project. All of this was happening, of course, with the project deadlines still happening and work still needed to be completed. And remember I said that Plus Delta had really stuck in the office. Well, this is a good example of how much it had stuck. So even in the chaos of doing the office renovation and still trying to get our project work done, on Friday afternoons during this time, we cobbled together some paper and an easel and some pens so that we could still gather as a group and process the week that we'd had. It was amazing that this occurred. The training sessions, they were great, and we didn't have any strong resistors within the group to the idea of change, so that was a really positive outcome. The Yellow Belt training wrapped up in the new year, and people were completing their homework so that they could receive their certificates. And guess what? COVID. Yeah. Now what do we do? Oh no. However, all was not lost because we had built a really good foundation of thinking skills. Now we just had to adapt them to the new situation. For us, the new situation meant that most people were a few people from the office, but had enough room to spread out. Thank goodness we had implemented daily project stand-ups into our routine. They had previously been in person, but we quickly pivoted to virtual stand-ups so that our projects could keep moving forward. If it had not been for the fact that we had this in our routine, I think we really would have floundered in those first few weeks and months of the COVID situation. Our paper Kanban Post-its, they didn't cut it anymore across the internet, of course. So project Kanbans also became digital. It's a good thing we didn't invest in the Post-it factory because, you know, it wouldn't have been a long-standing investment. We're currently using MS Planner for our virtual Kanbans, and there are some nice filtering and due date features that are built in. So it is actually a step up from the paper Kanbans. And sometimes, but not often enough, we do dust off the pull planning tools. Even though it doesn't feel like we've really gained any fluency in them. Miro is what we're currently using for pull planning, and it is a pretty easy digital transformation from the paper Post-its. And it may not be the optimum tool, but until we get better at the actual discipline of pull planning and doing it on a regular basis, it's not worth the investment of an expensive software program to facilitate something that is not yet part of our routine on a regular basis. And of course, there's still quite a bit of team building and culture in the office, and we've continued our Plus Deltas regularly on a Friday afternoon. We've switched to using a shared digital whiteboard, and the advantage of that actually is everyone can draw and add silly comments at any time during the discussion themselves. It doesn't rely on the facilitator. We have a lot of fun doing it, even though we're not in the same room, and most people keep their cameras on. So it does feel like we are getting together, even though it's not in person. We've continued to develop and examine our processes and find improvements in our architecture office. Computers are an important tool, of course, but they don't solve all your problems if we're not intentional with the way that we use them. Email, I'm sure, is a problem for everyone in terms of overload of email, and it's applicable to all the phases of our work. Many teammates have taken on the challenge of trying to tame and tackle their email as part of their own personal productivity improvements. We use certain software throughout the phases of our work, and so we examine where there are commonalities and set up standardized processes. For example, we use InDesign for many of our report formatted work, and we use Revit for the work that involves drawings and renderings and 3D production. We examine how we're going to use them at different phases so that we can lay the foundation for future phases. Do something smart and intentional at an earlier phase, and it will pay back rewards later if we've set up the files correctly. We implement templates and standardized fonts so that we're not having to revise things at every stage. We can't let everybody just be a cowboy and do it however they want to do. On the construction administration side of our work, this, of course, contains a lot of repeated processes of paperwork. There's a lot, you have change orders, you have reviews, you have RFIs, and so ensuring that we have consistency and maintaining flow is important in this portion of the work. Some of the projects are formally utilizing software such as Onware or Procore to manage these, but some are actually doing it old school and with email to manage the flow. Even on the creative side, there are many things that we do that are not invented from scratch for each project. So we identify the common repeats and gather them into a warehouse of parts so that we can use them for future projects. It's important that we teach people how to use these parts so that they're not blindly being thrown into a project without thought. We want them to have the easy button, but we don't want them to be using the lazy button. An example of one of these parts that we have gathered together is barrier-free washrooms. One of our staff members has done a whole series of iterations of different ways you can lay out a barrier-free washroom and put them together into one place. So if you're in the beginning stages where you're just doing schematic design, you know what the right room dimensions and proportions you should be using at that stage, and you can get it right from the get-go. And then as you're going through to the more detailed stages of the project, you've got the detailed components that are already there and in place, such as grab bars and washroom accessories. It's still important for people using these pieces to understand the requirements that are underlying them, such as the building code and barrier-free requirements, but they don't have to start with a blank page and invent it on their own. They can use the wisdom of people who have done it before and do the alterations that are going to be suitable for their project. So communications and handoffs are key for keeping our projects flowing and reducing the possibility of unnecessary rework. With clients, we, of course, strive to understand and meet their requirements and expectations, but it's also our responsibility to make sure that they are understanding what they're receiving from us as deliverables and what they are approving at each stage of the project. No one wants to be revisiting the schematic design when the tender date is knocking at your door. With the consultants, it's important to clearly communicate what the deliverables content and timelines are with the other consultants on the team. Providing standard process documents such as a project execution plan can be very useful, and they can be easily tailored between each project so that you're providing consistency across the projects, but refining them for the specific project needs. Clear and collaborative communication can go a long way with the external stakeholders as well, such as contractors and provincial and municipal authorities. Proactively engaging them on emergent issues can help to prevent delays and rework later on. Most importantly, we must be able to communicate clearly with our own project teammates in RPK. In a virtual world, this becomes a little bit more of a deliberate act because we're not just chatting at the coffee maker in the morning about what's going on with the project. Our regularly scheduled project stand-ups help to keep everyone on the same page with what's going on. The first year and a half of the pandemic was pretty tough, I have to say. We had some pretty big project deadlines to meet, and due to pandemic-related supply chain issues, what got added into the mix was additional explorations of structure and materials in order to try and combat skyrocketing price increases in certain sectors. Faced with these pressures, our discipline of continuous improvement did not always maintain itself intact. It's really tough to set aside time to improve when honestly you're scrambling to stay ahead of the deadlines that you have. However, these days, some of those really painful crunches are behind us, and we're feeling like we're working at a steadier state right now. With the steadier state, we have renewed enthusiasm at RPK to be examining our practices, documenting our standard procedures. One example of how we do this is by using OneNote. And if you've never been introduced to OneNote, it's actually a fantastic piece of software that allows different people to be collaborating in a document at the same time, and it attributes what the content is, who has created the content on a line-by-line item. So if you've created content and someone comes in and has revised some of it, their initials will appear beside the portions that they have revised. So you can go back to them with questions, or just know that it's been changed since the document that you created. It really allows us to have our standard processes to be live documents and keep them up to date. Previous to using OneNote, if we were doing a standard document, we'd create it in a Word file and make a PDF, and then we'd formally issue it to people. But it just wasn't really sustainable. It was a lot of work to be doing that formal process, and we found that we weren't doing it often enough. So then our standard documents really didn't stay up to date. Most importantly, we continue to share our learnings with each other. One example is that every week we each participate in a short Lean check-in to let others know what we worked on and what we plan to work on. These meetings last only about 15 minutes, and there's 2 groups within the office just to keep the groups a little bit smaller and more manageable. Additionally, we have bi-weekly specialty meetings that are about an hour, and these delve into certain topics such as drawing and spec, production, contract administration, design concepts, topics about our Revit and InDesign software. And sometimes these are lessons learned from past projects. Other times we talk about new standard practices that we're introducing, or maybe we've gotten the group together to gather some input and opinions from the larger group so that a new standard practice can be created. And here's where I want to do some bragging, because this subject really warms my heart. These meetings are usually not led by the partners and associates at RPK. Staff have taken it upon themselves to schedule the meetings, decide on the agendas, and conduct follow-up actions after the meetings. I am so proud of the leadership that we have developed in this company. The solutions that are coming from the people they're coming from the people who have to implement them, and therefore they're not being dictated by the management group, but rather being created by the people themselves. Therefore, people are excited about the improvements that are being done. Partners and associates, of course, are invited to participate in the meetings, and we often do, so that we can share our experiences and our knowledge about the subjects. But to be honest, this kind of lean thinking would continue even if the partners and associates did not show up at one of the meetings. It really, truly has become part of the culture of RPK, and I'm very pleased and proud of that situation. And that's all I have today.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen. That was really awesome. Especially that last part too. It just really got me in the heartstrings there too, hearing about that. You guys have a fantastic team there at RPK.
We really do.
One of my key takeaways for me is I just love the weekly group plus deltas, where you guys just discuss everything under the sun, and sharing that facilitator role, and having memes and beer or scotch. That's an awesome mixture that creates a foundation of learning in your culture, and continuous learning. That's that secret sauce for Lean, right? And if anything's going to stick, that's sticky worthy. So. Thank you, Karen, for speaking today. Before we get into the QAs, I just want to get some housekeeping stuff out of the way. Remember, our home base for the Edmonton COP is the Edmonton Construction Association. Beyond social and networking events and support, they also have in-house printing services. So, go see Dave down in the basement, as they call it. They can complete your print job for a fraction of the cost that you might see elsewhere. Remember, we hold Lean coffees every third Friday of the month. And our next one is February 18th, where we're going to be holding a virtual Lean coffee. We're going to have a whole bunch of different people in there and just have a general Q&A. And so stay tuned to our LinkedIn page for details. I'll copy the our LinkedIn page to the chat. You should join there for a whole bunch of different stuff. And as well too, I will be sharing a copy of this recording at our YouTube page there, and it's also in the chat as well too.